Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi. Date is 6th April 2026. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and the Indian Express newspapers which are relevant for your examination. In the initial two topics we have included two mains practice questions which will be useful for your upcoming mains examination. In the analysis section, in our first topic, we'll try to understand the concept of stagflation and why there is a possible prospect of stagflation, particularly in the backdrop of recent Iran war. Then in our second topic, we will look into various issues related to transgender community. Also, we'll try to understand the debate around Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Amendment Act 2026. Thereafter, keeping in mind the upcoming prelims examination 2026, we will discuss 5 important prelims pointers that will be highly useful for your upcoming prelims examination. So, stay tuned. So let's start our discussion with the first topic, that is Iran war and stagflation. The context of this topic is that in today's Indian Express newspaper, there is an article which says that there is a prospect of stagflation, especially in the backdrop of current ongoing Iran war. On 28th of February, US and Israel forces attacked Iran. Iran also replied, Iran also attacked Israel, as well as they also attacked various countries in the Middle East, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc. Iran also blocked Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the important route for the global supply of oil and gas. Countries like India, which are majorly dependent on the import of oil, they are facing crisis. Along with that, the gas, which is mainly imported, that has also been disrupted, and that is also creating problems for various industries. Like in today's newspaper itself, there is an report that several industries are not functioning properly. They has also laid off various employees because of lack of proper supply of gas. So stagflation is made up of two words, stagnation and inflation. Stagnation in the economy is the condition where there is low level of employment plus there is low level of economic growth. And inflation is the general increase in the price of goods and services. If there is an economy which is witnessing a condition where employment levels are low, economic growth is low, but there is overall increase in the prices of goods and services, that is the condition of stagflation. For example, in the current context, if the raw materials are not being supplied properly, if some of the important materials that are used by the industries, if there will be disruption in the supply of that, so companies will not be able to function properly, industries will not be able to function properly, and in that case, they might lay off certain employees who were working earlier. So there will be low level of employment because industries are not functioning, people are losing their jobs. Plus, when there is no value addition that is being done by the industries, that will also hamper the overall economic growth. But since there is also the disruption with regard to the supply of goods and services, along with that, since the crude oil, gas, etc., that is highly used by other industries also, for example, transportation that uses the diesel or other important fuels are also being used by other industries. So when the fuel is becoming costlier, transportation will become costlier, and that additional cost or that increased cost will also be supplied to other industries which are using transportation as a means, and that will add to the cost of that product, and that will ultimately lead to a condition of inflation, that is a cost push inflation. So because of this ongoing war that has led to supply chain disruptions, that has led to disruptions in the supply of oil and gas, there may be a case where stagnation may be in the economy, plus there may be also the inflation or increase in the general price level of goods and services. And this particular topic is related to your GS paper 3, growth and development. Now, if you talk about the modern classification, so stagnation, as already said, the high inflation in the economy plus high unemployment and plus the lower growth, low level of employment you can say, plus low growth along with the high inflation is the case of the stagflation in the economy. Subsequently, the skewflation in the economy where high prices are there in one sector while the others are remaining stable. Or there, for example, there is one sector that is facing increase in the price of goods and services, other sector might be stable, or other sector might see the decrease in the price of goods and services. Along with that, disflation is another classification, and this classification is the modern classification by the economist that says that if there is decrease in the rate of inflation but not in the fall, not there is no fall in the prices. For example, let's suppose there was a chocolate that was available at 100 rupees. Because of increase in the cost of sugar, cocoa and other raw materials that are used by the chocolate industry, let's suppose this particular chocolate became 110 rupees. Or there is a month of February where everyone just need chocolate, and that also led to an increase demand of the products, or there is an increase in the aggregate demand of chocolates, and that has also pushed the prices of the chocolate at 110 rupees. So what you can see, the general price level of the chocolate was 100 rupees, but now it is giving, or it is available in the market at 110 rupees. So this general level of increase in the prices is called as inflation, right? So here there is inflation, but what if the prices subsequently cool down little bit, and now the current price is 105 rupees, general price was 100 rupees, it has increased to 110 rupees, but present price is 105 rupees. There is inflation, but there is decrease in the rate of inflation. Earlier it was 10%, now it's just 5%. Deflation, that is general fall in the prices, that can be due to economic depression, that can be due to the lower incomes of the people, where people are not demanding goods and services, and that has subsequently led to decreased aggregate demand, and that has also led to decrease in the prices of goods. Also, this is mainly because of the lower demand. This can be because of job losses, low economic growth, etc. For example, let's suppose instead of 100 rupees, the prices of chocolate decreased to 98 rupees, 95 rupees or 90 rupees. That is the case of general fall in the prices, and that is your deflation. Subsequently, you have the reflation. That is the steps that are taken to revive the economy through the fiscal policy by the central government, or by the monetary policy by the central bank of the particular country. So whatever the measures that can be taken, for example, some of the expansionary measures that can be taken, for that there can be the policy rate cut by the central bank, or other measures that with regard to the fiscal policy of the central government, that they can go with the capital expenditure, they can probably come with the income support measures, where people will have more money in their hands, and that will subsequently lead to more demand of goods and services, and that will lead to reflation. But here it is because of the steps that are being taken either by the central government under their fiscal policy, or by the either by the central government under the fiscal policy, or by the central bank under their monetary policy. Then you have other types of inflation also, the headline inflation, that is the total inflation rate that covers all the goods and services, including fuel, power, etc. So these food and fuel items, they are generally volatile. That is the reason they are excluded from the core inflation in the economy. So this is the inflation rate that excludes the volatile items like food and fuel, because these items fluctuate frequently, and then it becomes very difficult for us to keep a track on the possible inflation, or what exactly is the inflation. And it actually helps in identifying the long term inflationary pressure that is there, inflationary trends that are there, without the short term noise that is there in the economy. Then you have the other inflation indices also, indexes, that is helping us in identifying what exactly is the inflation in the economy from the perspective of consumers, from the perspective of wholesalers, or from the perspective of producers itself. So wholesale price index, that represents the price of goods at wholesale stage itself. That is the goods that are sold in bulk, and they are traded between the wholesalers, traders, bulk dealers, etc. That is not the trade that is happening between the consumers. Here this wholesale price index is released by Office of Economic Advisor under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Then you have the CPI, or Consumer Price Index, that actually tracks the change in the retail price of goods and services. That is, the retail price is the price at which me and you, or the ultimate consumers, are buying the products. And here the people are buying these products for the daily consumption purposes. And the base year for the Consumer Price Index has been recently rationalized to 2024. Along with that, the base year for the GDP, gross domestic product, or index of industrial production, has been also rationalized to 2022 to 23. Also, earlier how exactly we can calculate that whether there is an inflation in the economy if we have to see the retail price of goods and services. First of all, what we do, we take a basket of goods and services. There will be certain commodities which will be kept under this basket, and whatever the increase or decrease will be there in the prices of the goods that are kept under this basket, accordingly will say whether there is inflation in the economy or not, right? So earlier this basket was outdated, and the goods that were kept under this basket were not reflecting the current consumption pattern of the consumers. And that is the reason the household consumption expenditure survey, which was giving an idea about the consumption patterns of the people, according to that household consumption expenditure, this basket is also rationalized. And now this rationalized basket will give us an idea what is the current CPI trend, right? And this CPI is released by the NSO, that is National Statistical Office, under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Also, you have to understand that this CPI is released for CPI rural, CPI urban, and then there is this CPI combined. That is the index that is seen by the Monetary Policy Committee or MPC and this MPC has been given a target to maintain the inflation at 4 plus minus 2 level. And now this particular MPC will be targeting the CPI combined itself for the inflation targeting, right? Also, you have the producer price index that actually measures the prices from the point of view of producers of the goods and services, tracking prices at different stages of the production. For example, it looks at inflation from the viewpoint of industry and business and measures the price changes before the consumer purchase the final goods and services. Accordingly, they see that what is the price change that is happening. Then you have the type of inflation that is based on the inflation rate. Also, from producer price index point of view, the producers gets an idea whether there is change in the prices of raw materials, transportation costs, electricity, or any other consumable that they are using. Then based on the inflation rate, there are different types. For example, creeping inflation, that is the general inflation rate is 0 to 3%. Walking inflation, where the rate is around 3 to 7%. Running inflation, where the rate is around 7 to 15%. And galloping and hyperinflation are the most significant inflation types, most significant inflation that is there, because it leads to an enormous increase in the price of goods and services, and that significantly decreases the buying capacity of the people. For example, Venezuela was facing hyperinflation, and even to buy few eggs people were carrying huge amount of money, because that was the condition that the products were very costly. The purchasing power of money has decreased significantly, and that is one of the reason why people had to carry significant amount of money whenever they were going to buy even the basic goods, right? Then this monetary policy committee, which we were discussing, which has been given a target to maintain the inflation at 4 plus minus 2 level, and this is the index being represented by CPI combined. So section 45ZB of RBI Act 1934 talks about the monetary policy committee, and this was introduced by amending the RBI Act 1934. And this monetary policy committee consists of 6 members, 3 from the central bank and 3 from the Reserve Bank of India or RBI itself. That consists of RBI governor, deputy governor, another official of RBI, plus 3 members that will be nominated by the central government itself. And cumulatively, they will be deciding what will be the inflation targeting rate. That means that let's suppose if we have to maintain the 4 plus minus 2, so what should be the policy changes, policy rate that we should change? What is the repo rate changes that has to be made? That simply, if there is a statement that is coming in the examination that monetary policy committee decides the policy rate or repo rate itself, that will be correct. Majorly, they are deciding only the repo rate or the policy rate itself. So they determine the repo rate. They also formulate the monetary policy of the country. They also issues bi-monthly statements with an update with the commentary on the whatever the economic situation is there, especially with regard to the liquidity in the economy. Why these meetings are so important? Because this ensures or this controls the domestic money supply as well as interest rate. That also impacts the deposit rate, that also impacts the lending rate, etc. That is the reason it is not only important for the economy, but also the constituents of the economy, people like me and you, are also getting impacted by the changes that are being done in the policy rate or in the repo rate itself. And with the changes in that, it helps in controlling the inflation. For example, recently what we were discussing, that Iran war is going on. The US and Israel forces attacked Iran in the end of the February itself. Until then, there is a constant fight that is going on between the Iran and the US and Israel forces itself. So this whole Middle East conflict that is there presently, that is raising a risk of stagflation. Why? Because after US and Israelis attacked Iran, Iran attacked Israel, but along with that, it is also attacking Middle East country. It also blocked Strait of Hormuz, and that has led to a condition of lower growth that is being faced by various countries. Plus, it has also led to a high inflation in the economy, especially the countries which are dependent on import. For example, in India, India is dependent on 85% for their crude oil needs. If you see the historical background, in 1970s, there was stagflation in United States. GDP growth was around 0.5% in year 1974, and then subsequently it went on to minus 0.2% in 1975. Inflation in the year 1974 was 11%. It increased to 9% in the year 1975. And the main trigger were the oil price shocks. Whenever there will be increase in the prices of the oil, that will also impact the transportation cost, that will also impact the industries that are using oil as one of the important raw material, or they have a dependency. And that whenever there will be supply disruptions of the oil, industries will be impacted, and that will ultimately lead to a case of the stagflation, that is low employment, high unemployment you can say, plus low economic growth, as well as there will be very high prices of goods and services. Then you have certain other triggers. For example, people are fearing risk of energy supply disruption. For example, there has been increase in influx of number of peoples on the petrol pumps, and the only reason why that is being witnessed is because of the fact that even with well-read person, there is an apprehension that tomorrow there may be disruption that might be faced by the economy with regard to the supply of the petrol. Also, you have the closure and blockage of key routes that is being seen. So we have the energy supply disruptions. We have seen the major suppliers, they have been hit. Major supplies, the major suppliers, they are not in a condition to supply. Along with that, there has been blockages that are done by the Iran. For example, the Strait of Hormuz itself, because of which it is becoming difficult to supply this particular energy, to supply this particular petrol or diesel. Also, transmission channels that are being used. For example, with the energy price rises, there is increase in the fuel prices, LPG prices, plastic, and is also becoming costlier. So certain other industries also, for example, the industry that is there in Morbi that I was discussing in today's newspaper itself, there is a case that industries are facing crisis. They are on the verge of collapse because of the lack of proper supply of the raw materials. Along with that, what we can see that when these raw materials are not being supplied properly to these industries, they are leading to layoffs, they are going towards layoffs, etc. And that is also leading to a condition of the stagflation. The production cost that has increased because of increase in the raw material cost. For example, various hotel, restaurant, etc. They stopped their operations, and the reason why they stopped their operation because there was lack of proper supply of the LPGs. And some of these restaurants or the hotels which are still functioning, some of them have increased their prices to offset the increased prices of the LPG in the black market, or even in the normal circumstances, the commercial LPG has become costlier. Also, the supply chain disruptions is leading to reduced output, and that has also led to less supply, and demand is more or less same. That is also leading to an additional cost. Trade restrictions and sanctions on the Iran has also led to making the situation much more worse. So why a particular this supply chain disruption causes stagflation? First of all, it is a cost push inflation because of the supply shock. For example, Iran and other Middle East countries, they are one of the major suppliers of the oil. But this particular oil was being utilized by various countries, including India. But because of the conflict that is going on, it is very dangerous, and it is also less possible to extract the oil and then subsequently supply it to the countries which are in need, right? So because of this additional cost, because of this supply chain shock, this is creating a stagflation like condition. Also, there is simultaneous decline in the output and employment. Output is declining because the companies or the industries are not able to function. Plus, employment is also reducing. Unemployment is increasing because of the lesser avenues that are available in the urban areas. Then traditional demand management tools, they are also becoming ineffective. Then why exactly it is hard to manage? For example, the policies have trade-off. What does this mean? That whenever we are going to control the inflation, for example, a repo rate has been increased. If the repo rate has been increased to control the inflation or to decrease the liquidity in the economy, it will directly hurt growth because the credit will become costlier. It will be very costlier for the industries to take the loans. Consumer spending will also reduce because the personal loans, the credit card bills, etc. will further increase because of increase in the repo rate. Also, whenever we are trying to stimulate growth, that if we want to support the growth and we are going with the cut in the repo rate, or we want to do government want to increase the overall expenditure, and that will further lead to a condition where overall liquidity in the economy will further increase, and that will further lead to a high inflation in the economy. So stagflation is a kind of policy dilemma. What should be the way forward? How we should manage this? It will be a very difficult situation or catch-22 situation. For India, there are specific concerns. As already said, that 85% of our crude oil needs are getting fulfilled by the import itself. With this disruption, there has been an imported inflation. Why? Because the imported products are becoming costlier, and that is leading to an additional cost to the overall products that are using those imported products. Also, rising oil prices means higher inflation. There will be fiscal pressure to give various subsidies to the industries which are facing crisis, to the individuals or the people who are losing their jobs. And that can also widen the current account deficit because of the reduced potential of our exports because of the increase in the cost of these products. Also, with the high imports that we are doing, that will also lead to an increased expenditure or increased expenses from our forex reserves, and that will also lead to an increase in overall import bills, and that will lead to more current account deficit or the trade deficit. So what should be done? What should be the way forward? First of all, we must maintain the supply chain security. Whatever the important routes are there, for example, Strait of Hormuz, etc., there should be a free passage to all the oil tankers, all the LPG gas tankers, etc., to ensure that there is consistent supply. Also, we can also diversify our sources. We have started taking from Russia. We are also taking from some of the African countries like Nigeria, etc., but that too is in very minimal amount. So we should diversify our sources so that in future also, if there is a supply chain disruption, we may not have to face the heat. The strategic petroleum reserves that are there in Padur, Vishakhapatnam, etc., they can be further expanded to ensure that we have the sufficient supply or the storage in case of any contingency that can be utilized. Energy diversification is also the need of the hour. For example, there should be more shift towards the renewables. For example, Pradhan Mantri Kusum Yojana. Then we have the other schemes like Aditi scheme, which is one of the scheme by Ministry of Powers that is helping in the MSMEs to shift to the renewables or to shift to the clean energy. We have the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. We have other important schemes that is pushing for the renewables, be it for the green hydrogen, be it for the biofuels, etc. So we need to shift towards that, and that will reduce the overall dependency on the imports. Along with that, For example, we went with the Shanti Act for the private sector participation in the nuclear energy. That will also support the overall goal of the reduction on the imports for the fuels. Supply side diplomacy can be used. For example, we can leverage our historical relation with the OPEC members, OPEC plus members. That can lead to inconsistent supply. Energy efficiency is also need of the hour. For example, better fuel norms. We can shift beyond BS6 norms. That can also reduce the overall needs with better engine efficiencies that we can come. Domestic production boost, for example, whatever the traditional storage or the sources are there with regard to the oil, gas and critical minerals, they can be explored, they can be mined, and that can further reduce the import needs. Targeted subsidies can be there. For example, the specific sectors or the industries that are facing the major crisis, they can be subsequently supported. Also, the monetary fiscal coordination should be there to control the inflation, that subsequently if there is an increase in the repo rate by the RBI with regard to their monetary policy, so whatever the policy that is coming from the government under the fiscal policy, it should complement the monetary policy of the central government. Also, we have the current and the reserve stability should be there, currency and the reserve stability, that sufficient foreign currency should be there that can be utilized for the payments of the imports. There should be also a proper reserve stability should be there, because that is also going to be used to pay for our import bills. Regional energy cooperation should be there within the neighboring countries, to ensure that in case of contingency we can at least source some of the fuels from some of the energies from our neighboring countries. Green transition, as already said, should be towards the EV vehicles, hydrogen storage, etc. There is also need for demand rationalization, that demand should be rationalized. For example, if people can shift to the PNG or piped natural gas instead of LPG, that can significantly reduce the overall need of the LPG. Then logistic resilience, that whatever the logistics or whatever the supply chain is there, there should be proper resilience, there should be consistent supply with the help of proper safety and security. Also, import dependency reduction should be there to gradually shift towards the self-sufficiency, etc. And that will subsequently also make this particular overall situation better, even if there is this kind of situation is coming in future. Okay? So to ensure that there is high level of or increased level of employment, there should be fiscal policy, there should be targeted subsidies for the sector, and that will also stimulate the growth. And also subsequently RBI can go for tight monetary policy, with the help of which they can reduce the overall money supply. So there should be a proper coordination, and that can proper coordination between the fiscal and the monetary policy, and that can actually help us in coming out of this situation. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. Our next topic is Trans Rights 2026 Amendment Act. And the context of this topic is that a write-up has appeared covering various aspects of transgender persons, protection of rights, Amendment Act of 2026. And this is related to your GS paper 2, issues related to vulnerable sections, as well as syllabus of your GS paper 3, inclusive growth. So what is the legal definition of a transgender person? As per this Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act of 2019, a transgender person is one whose gender identity is not equal to the gender that is assigned at birth. For example, generally at birth there will be a gender that will be assigned to that person, either male or the female. But the present identity is not in sync with what was assigned at the time of birth. It actually includes the persons with intersex variations, gender queer individuals, or other the socio-cultural identities like Jogta, Aravani, Kinnar, etc. The different names with whom these transgender persons are called at different places in India. Also, if you see the legal recognition that is provided to them, that they are now recognized as third gender, even while filling the forms or in the public spaces. Now there is an option of third gender, or prefer not to say was another option that was introduced for the persons who does not belong to male or female gender. Also, these rights include the self-identification of gender, that they can self-identify them, that whether they will be coming under this third gender and they are not belonging to the male or the female. Also, that ensures that there is protection of fundamental rights. That, for example, Article 21 provides for a dignified life. It is not only right to life, but it is about having a dignified life. Also, if you see the demographic profile as per the last census that was conducted in 2011, there is around 4.88 lakh population of these transgender persons. But there has been various issues, for example, with regard to the education aspects itself. The literacy rate with them is very less. 46% is the literacy rate with females. That is much lower than the national average, which is 74%. There is 38% workforce participation as per UNDP. Also, that indicates a systemic exclusion that they are facing. That with regard to the education, with regard to the employment, etc., they have the limited opportunities, and that is one of the reasons they are excluded from educational employment domains. What are the other challenges related to the transgender persons? First of all, the employment discrimination. As per one of the report by the National Human Rights Commission, 96% of transgender persons are denied jobs because of various stereotypes, because of various apprehensions, because of various negative connotations associated with them. Also, that leads to a condition where these people, these transgenders, are compelled to do such tasks that are not safe for their health. For example, now they are attracted, or they are compelled to do begging, or they are compelled to do certain sex works, etc. And that may lead to jeopardizing their overall life. Also, the financial inclusion. For example, there is documentation barriers. For example, they have the earlier this was the condition. To a larger extent, this has been already addressed, that they have the limited documents available like PAN, Aadhaar, etc. And that leads to limited banking access, because in banks, PAN, Aadhaar, etc., these are the documents that are needed by the people. And only 15% of the overall transgender persons have access to the formal credit. And that leads to a condition where they are systemically excluded from the financial transactions or from the banking sector. Also, poverty and homelessness that is faced. For example, there is high BPL or below poverty line population, and most of the transgender persons, since they do not have the sufficient opportunities for employment, etc., they are perishing in poverty itself. They belong to the BPL category itself. They have the limited access to the housing facilities, public distribution system, etc., that is provided under the National Food Security Act of 2013, that divides overall population in priority households and Antyodaya Anna Yojana beneficiaries. Other social challenges faced by them: the stigma and the exclusion. For example, the family who excludes them because of the stigma associated with their gender. Along with that, they also faces various discrimination and as well as ostracization in the school itself. For example, they find it very difficult to make friends, and that also impacts their overall culmination into the society. Also, there is very high dropout rates with this because of the stigma, etc., that they face in the school. For example, 60% of them generally drop out from the school. Violence and the abuse that are faced by them: 92% they face violence as per the NHRC. That includes the police as well as the healthcare discrimination, that they do not get proper support from the health personnel, police personnel, etc. The healthcare barriers that are faced by them. For example, denial of treatments in 27% of cases as per the NALSA study. There is also lack of gender neutral wards, gender affirming care, lack of proper counseling, care, etc., according to their needs. Then you have the political challenges also. For example, under representation, that there are first of all very few candidates who get the tickets itself to contest the elections. Only 3 candidates were given ticket in 2024 general elections. There is weak implementation of the policy. For example, the Protection of Rights 2019 Act, that is poorly implemented. There is lack of proper sympathy, there is lack of proper compassion for them, and because of this bureaucratic apathy, there is poor implementation. The welfare boards that was mandated by the 2019 act, they are still not set up, they are not functioning properly. Lack of proper grievance redressal mechanism that was mandated by the 2019 act is still not in place. Identity barriers that are there, for example, difficulty in getting voter IDs, official documents, and that also impacts their employability, educational opportunities, scholarships, or the banking facilities, etc., that they can easily get. Then you have the behavioral as well as the institutional challenges. For example, there is lack of sensitization, there is stereotyping in media, education, etc. There is a negative image that is consistently associated with their overall personality, their overall behavior, etc. Family rejection and the mental health related challenges that are faced by them. The depression rate with them is around 45%. The suicidal ideation is around 31%. When they do not have the proper hope left to have a normal life, generally they choose this path of suicide itself. Institutional insensitivity, for example, police, teachers, doctors, they lack training, and because of the lack of training, they find it difficult to support them in a they find it very difficult to get proper support and hand holding. Ethical perspective related to the challenges, for example, there is social intolerance. 92% of them are excluded from economic participation. There is lack of job opportunities for them. There is lack of proper skill sets with them, with the help of which they can be employed. Failure of empathy, for example, when there is lack of proper empathy, there is apathy associated with them, that leads to alienation, that they feel disenchanted, they feel disassociated from the society itself, and that subsequently lead to a case of the mental distress which they face. There is also denial of equality that violates Article 14, equality before law, that two individuals are equal before the law itself. And whenever there is equality that is denied, so that is violating Article 14, which is a fundamental right mandated by the Part 3 of the Constitution itself. Violation of dignity, for example, it undermines basic human dignity as well as the rights that are provided by the fundamental rights. So there has been one amendment that is done in 2026 in the 2019 Act, and that actually provided for the Transgender Person Protection of Rights Amendment Act of 2026, and that actually marks a shift from the progressive judicial expansion to the restrictive legislative approach. That earlier there has been various judgments which has been made by the Honorable Supreme Court, and accordingly there has been various support measures that are being given to the transgenders. But now this act itself tries to take various reformative measures for the transgender itself. So earlier, if you see what is the judicial evolution of transgender rights, so there is this NALSA judgment that came in 2014 that actually recognized the transgender persons as the third gender itself. It mandated to that there should be a third gender that should be recognized apart from the male and female. It also affirmed the right to self-identification that was also supported by 2019 Act. It also provided for the protection of the fundamental rights of these transgender persons, Article 14, Article 19, freedom of speech and expression, and Article 21, to have a dignified life. And consistently it has been expanded by courts in various other judgments. For example, in Navtej Singh Johar judgment of 2018, it decriminalized the same-sex relations, the section 377 that has been struck down. Madras High Court in 2020, it said that trans persons are protected under the sexual harassment laws that are there in place. Kerala High Court in 2023 says that there should be a right to choose gender, and that comes under the individual autonomy, that is the same right to self-identification. Courts also in various judgments upheld that there should not be any medical requirement for the gender identity, because that may lead to the stereotyping, that may lead to an stigma, there may be an hesitancy. Also, there should be recognition in education, jobs, armed forces, elections, etc. to support them. Then marriage and relationship rights, for example, progressive interpretation, recognition of trans persons in the heterosexual marriages, protection of live-in relationships, Article 21 that provides for dignity and autonomy. But what is the changes that are done in the 2026? First of all, there is shift away from the self-identification. It removes the self-identification principle, and it actually introduces the district screening mechanism, that there will be a certificate of transgender that will be given to them only after the medical board verifies their claim. Only if the medical board says that their gender identity is not equal to what is the gender that was assigned at the birth, and only after that they will be getting the recognition as a transgender. There will be certificate that will be issued to them. Also, deletion of the identity categories. For example, it removes the terms like trans woman, gender queer, etc. It is also reintroducing the medicalization. For example, it requires medical certification, revised certificates for the gender changes, etc. There is also institutional control that is being supported by the 2026 amendment, that there is increased role of district magistrate, medical boards, who will be ultimately certifying their claim. Also, there is omissive discrimination. For example, if the medical board is not ready to give them certificate despite their claim, so they will not be getting their certificate. So if there is an omissive discrimination, that there is an discrimination that is being faced because of the omission, so because of the state inaction or weak enforcement of this amendment that is being done in 2026, there may be discrimination, there may be violation of Article 14 that these people may face. The judicial observation in 2025, Supreme Court actually criticized government for the administrative lethargy, that there is lack of proper grievance redressal mechanism, the medical boards, etc., that has to be established. There is bureaucratic apathy in establishing that. And also there is failure to implement the 2019 Act in letter and spirit. Along with that, what are the major issues with the amendment? First of all, the NALSA principle, the NALSA judgment that actually calls for the self-identification. The recent amendment under that, it is mandated that medical board will be helping in the identification. So NALSA judgment is being violated, that was calling for the self-identification. Also, the medicalization of the identities, that is undermining the dignity, that they must undergo the medical the inspection, and without which they will not be getting the certificate. That might lead to and hesitancy, and that can also lead to a case where they might be hesitant to even go to the medical board to get their certificates. Bureaucratic hurdles, for example, there are risks for the exclusion, that probably if they will not be ready to go to these places, medical boards, etc., probably they might be excluded. Also, lack of consultation with stakeholders that are there, for example, civil society organization, the organizations of the transgenders, NGOs, etc., that are in the field of the welfare of the transgenders. And that can also lead to potential violation of the Article 14, that is providing equality before law. And there has been various initiatives that were taken in the last few years to support the transgender person. For example, there was this national transgender portal that was launched for online identification, certificate issuance, etc. There is this support for marginalized individuals for livelihood and enterprise, that is a SMILE scheme that came in 2021, that provides for rehabilitation, shelter, healthcare support to these transgender persons. Garima Greh, that provides shelter homes, ensures that there is a proper dignity. Ayushman Bharat, that was extended, that provides for health insurance, gender affirming care. Global self-ID laws that are there, legal gender recognition without medical proof is provided to them. Then you have the anti-discrimination laws that provides for protection in jobs, housing, services, etc. Now, what is the path ahead? What should be done to address the underlying issues? First of all, there should be a strict enforcement of the laws in place, like the 2019 Act that was there and that is amended. So there should be mandatory sensitization training that should be provided to the medical boards, school, workplaces, etc. That there should be a comfortable environment that is provided to the transgender persons. And for example, Madras High Court directed that there should be training that should be given to the officials, that how they should deal with these transgender persons. We should also simplify the gender identity recognition, the current amendment that is done in 2026, which has made it mandatory for the transgenders to visit the medical boards. That should be rationalized, and that will ensure easy, dignified self-identification. It will also reduce the bureaucratic hurdles in ID documents, certification process, etc. Also promote inclusive employment and entrepreneurship. For example, incentivize private sector hiring, provide financial support, credit access for trans-led startups. ठीक है. Then strengthen the trans-friendly healthcare. For example, there can be a dedicated cell, there can be dedicated doctors for them, and they should be also sensitized well to deal with the transgenders in a empathic manner. Also, we should provide the gender affirming care. The mental health support should be provided to them effectively. For example, telemanas facility, they should be effectively extended to them. Also, Odisha and Karnataka are the states, they offer the gender affirming surgeries to these transgenders. So this kind of subsidized surgeries can be extended by all the states and unities itself. Public awareness and social sensitization, that is also very important. We can use media, especially social media, especially television, etc., to normalize the transgender identities, also to reduce the stigma associated with them. For example, the Doodoshan, there can be the various advertisements that can come, dedicated programs can be them, that can showcase the real life transgender stories, their success stories, the stories of the struggle, that can motivate people, that can also make the people more sensitive towards these transgender persons. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. Moving towards our prelims pointers section that we have introduced, considering your upcoming prelims examination 2026. The first topic is the office of Prime Minister. This is related to your GS paper 2 executive, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 8. So on 22nd March 2026, Honorable Prime Minister completed 8,931 days as head of an elected government in India, combining over 13 years as the Chief Minister of Gujarat from October 7, 2001 to May 21, 2014, with 3 consecutive terms as the Prime Minister. So there is a debate that is going on that should there be a limit on number of days that a person can hold public office, especially the important offices like the office of Prime Minister. So should there be a limit on number of tenures that a person can hold under office of Prime Minister? If we see what is the current condition or situation of office of Honorable Prime Minister of India, so he is the real executive or the de facto head in any of the parliamentary system. The Council of Ministers is headed by the Prime Minister itself, and this is the actual decision making body, and especially the Prime Minister is the de facto decision maker. And President is the nominal executive, that is the de jure, that all the decisions are taken in the name of the President of India, but it is the Prime Minister of India who is taking the decision. So this Prime Minister is heading the Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers are deciding, but the decisions are taken in the name of the Honorable President. If you see the Article 25, which talks about the appointment process of the Prime Minister, that the Prime Minister should be appointed by the President, and what is the convention with regard to the appointment of the President? The leader of any majority party in the Lok Sabha will be appointed as the Prime Minister, whosoever is the leader, and that leader will be chosen by the members, and he will be or she will be appointed as the Prime Minister of India. In case of hung parliament where no political party has a clear majority, President will appoint any person or a leader of the largest political party or leader of the coalition leader. And in case of the vacancy due to death or the resignation of the Prime Minister, if the party is electing any other leader, then President must appoint that person as the Prime Minister. Otherwise, there are limited discretion that are available with the President, that whom he actually want to appoint as in the office of the Prime Minister. If you see the various clarifications that are given by the judiciary in 1980, Delhi High Court says that the Prime Minister need not prove majority before the appointment. He can be first appointed as the Prime Minister, and then subsequently he can be asked to prove his majority in the Lok Sabha at the later stage. In 1997, the Supreme Court says that Any person who is not the member of any of the house, Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha, can also be appointed as the Prime Minister, and then he will have the 6 months to be again appointed as the member either of the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha. So a person can be in the office of the Prime Minister for 6 months even without being the part of the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha. And he must become MP within this period itself, otherwise he will lose the office of the Prime Minister itself. And PM can be from either of the house, either the Lok Sabha, which is called as the House of People, or from the Rajya Sabha. And this is not the case in UK or United Kingdom, where PM need not to be from the lower house itself. Then if you see the article that is associated with the office of Prime Minister, Article 74, that says that there should be the Council of Ministers to aid and advise the President itself, and President is bound by the advice of the Council of Minister, and Office of Council of Minister is headed by the President itself. Article 75 that talks about the appointment and the tenure, that Prime Minister is appointed by the President, Council of Minister is collectively responsible to the President itself. Article 75 subclause 3 that calls for collective responsibility. Again, Council of Minister is accountable to the Lok Sabha itself. Article 78 that talks about the duties of the Prime Minister, that PM informs the President, provides information itself. And then if you see the current context, so as already discussed, that Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he completed more than 8,000 days in the office, and he is the longest serving PM after Jawaharlal Nehru. So there is a debate that is going on that should the executive tenure be limited in a parliamentary system. And the constitutional design is that the executive or the PM derives legitimacy from the Lok Sabha majority, that if the person will be having the majority in the Lok Sabha, at that case itself a person or the leader will be appointed as the Prime Minister. There is no fixed tenure until and unless the person is having the majority, he or she can be in the office itself. The day or at the time when the person will lose the majority in the Lok Sabha, or he will lose the members will lose the confidence in him, the person will have to vacate the office. So he continues as long as majority support exists in the House of the People. Also, what was the view of the Constituent Assembly? It rejected rigid tenure because they were preferring the daily accountability with the help of question hour, that members can ask the questions from the Council of Ministers, from the Treasury benches, or from the Prime Minister itself. Also, there are no confidence motion that can be passed if there is a possibility that the current ruling parties has lost the majority in the Lok Sabha. So there can be a no confidence motion that can come, and if that is passed, the party will have to leave the office, or the person in the Prime Minister's office will have to leave the office. Also, periodic elections that are done, that also ensures that there is a proper accountability, and any person who is appointed in the office of Prime Minister is representing the will of the people. People will lose confidence in that person. Obviously, with the help of elections, that person will be losing, and that person will have to vacate the office. Then the anti-defection law that came under the 10th schedule, and that is provided by the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act. And the main purpose of this was to ensure the stability of the governments. For example, earlier there were various members who were switching their political parties, and that was creating instability. So the effect of that was that it has created the party discipline. The members of the party are disciplined, they are not switching the sides. But it has also reduced the dissent within the parties, that the member of political parties now has to toe the line of the political party. They cannot dissent with the view of the political party. Also, effectiveness of no confidence motions has also been reduced, that any of the political party, if that party or the leader of that party is coming with the confidence motion or no confidence motion, all the members has to support the same. They cannot go against what the political party is wanting or what the leader of that political party wants. If there is a political party coming with the no confidence motion, all the members has to support. Even if a particular member thinks that no, there should be I should vote against this no confidence motion, he cannot, because he is from a political party. His loyalty is with the political party itself. He cannot dissent with the view, he cannot vote against the political party's view. The issue is that it is weakening the legislative accountability over executive. MPs or the members of the parliaments are bound by the party itself. They are not bound by their own view. And that has led to a limited independent oversight that is visible. There is also comparative perspective. For example, countries with the presidential systems, the USA, Brazil, etc., that has also led to the term limits that are existing. Parliamentary systems are there where there is no formal limits, but it rely mainly on the political conventions. Problem is that there is term limit evasion. For example, globally, the leaders extend tenure via the constitutional amendments. That some of the people who are already in the offices, they go for the constitutional amendments, and then they increase. After the amendment itself, they increase their tenure. There is the institutional manipulations that are done, especially the election machineries, election related institutions, etc. But in India, there is as such no formal limit that is provided by the constitution itself. But combined with the weak accountability, there is a risk of the executive dominance. That if there is a political party having the majority in both the houses, how we can ensure, or how can we ensure that there will be an accountability? Because slowly and gradually the number of days parliament is meeting has reduced, the time for the question hours are reducing, 0 hour etc. related times allocation related to that is also reducing. So electoral democracy is still functioning. Voters can still remove governments, but that can happen only after every 5 years. What about the daily accountability? What about the yearly accountability? So with the declining parliamentary debate quality, with the disruptions, with the adjournments that we see, there is reduced legislative scrutiny. There is also executive gains. For example, now they have better control over the institutions, because now legislature debates etc. are declining. Narrative shaping power, electoral advantage over time, because now these people, as said by the writer of this particular article, has a better position with regard to the overall control over the institution. This is said by the writer of this article. So what should be the way forward? What should be done? We can reform the anti-defection law. We can exempt the no confidence motions, that any member, even if he wants to go against the party lines for the no confidence motion, he can go with that. We can restore the independence of MPs, that they can have their own views, they can dissent with the political party. We can also introduce limits if there is a but before that there should be proper debates that should happen, especially in the parliament and also in the public domain, to decide whether we should go with the introduction of the limits or not. There can be possible cap on the tenure of the prime minister. But the challenges are that it may override the voter choices, that if voter wants that a person should continue in the office, it can override that. And it will be difficult in the parliamentary systems to go with that. But the need of R is to strengthen the institution. For example, parliamentary committees, which actually audits, which ensures or which goes for the better scrutiny of all the legislative work, they should be properly strengthened. There should be mandatory debates that should be done. There should be less adjournments that should be there. Accountability mechanism should be also there, that proper time should be allocated to the question hour, 0 hour, etc. And that will ensure that there is better accountability that we are witnessing in the parliamentary democracy. Our next topic is plastic waste management rules. This is related to your GS paper 3, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation. And this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 6. So this plastic waste management rules that came in 2016 with an objective to minimize plastic waste, promote recycling, ensure environmentally sound disposal of plastic, especially the single-use plastic, because it was creating various issues. That huge dump of the solid waste that we were witnessing, especially in the metropolitan cities, for example, Gazipur landfill site, Okla landfill site in Delhi itself. It was also clogging sewer, etc. It was also contributing water pollution when it was going to the water bodies. It was creating the air pollution whenever it was getting burnt. The major feature of this plastic waste management rule that came in 2016 was that they extended that it provided for extended producer responsibility, or the EPR, that whether it is the producer of the plastic, importers of the plastic, or the brand owners, they are responsible for collection, recycling and disposal. That in a way was promoting the circular economy, that if you are producing, if you are importing, do ensure that you are also taking back this plastic and subsequently you are reusing that. Also, there is ban on single-use plastic that came in 2022, for example, straw, etc., that were banned. So there has been a prohibition on identified single-use plastic items. Also, there has been thickness norms that were mandated. For example, minimum 120 microns of the plastic was allowed. That promotes reuse, reduce littering. That this 120 microns plastic is also costlier, so generally people will be hesitating in using that. Plus the shelf life of that is also very high, so people will be reusing that, so that will ultimately reduce the overall plastic consumption. Traceability that came in 2025 amendment, that from 1st January 2025 there is mandatory barcode or the QR code that should be on the plastic packaging, that will enable the life cycle tracking of that plastic, and subsequently it will be easier for us to collect, recycle and dispose that. Also, the role of the local bodies, that urban local bodies and gram panchayats, mandatory, they should collect, segregate and process the plastic waste. Then this plastic waste management rules 2026, that is the latest iteration in the plastic waste management rules. It has amended the 2016 rules under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. This is one of the important act from which a lot of questions has been asked in the prelims examination. So in 2026, the amendments are related to the mandatory recycled content, that there should be progressive use of recycled plastic, 30% 2025-26, 60% from 2018-19. For category 1 packaging, exemptions are allowed where regulators like FSSAI under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare or CDSO who prohibit the recycled plastic use. There should be carry forward provisions. For example, FSSAI prohibits certain use of recycled plastics in food grade or the food products. CDSO restrict it in the medicines, etc. Carry forward provision, that shortfall in the food contact packaging targets 2025-26, that can be carried forward up to 3 years. Clear definitions, for example, explicit definitions are added for end of life disposal, reuse, plastic waste processor, that when there should be clear definition of these important terms, it will lead to less ambiguity. Reuse obligations, for example, mandatory reuse target for the rigid plastic packaging. For example, up to 85% of reuse for large water containers that are used. For example, 10 liters of Bisleri water that is there, the container that is a rigid plastic packaging. Also, with regard to the governance and the enforcement, urban local bodies will be the primary enforcement institution for these rules. State level monitoring committees will be there, that will be keeping a proper oversight, proper watch on the enforcement of these rules. Digital tracking plus audit will be by registered environmental auditors. So all this will ensure that there is proper governance and enforcement that we are witnessing of these plastic waste management rules. Our next topic is midday meal scheme, which is related to your GS paper 2, government policies and interventions, and this has appeared in today's The Indian Express page number 12. So the context is that in this report of the Indian Express, it says that the number of midday meals, they are falling in Gujarat, but overall spending is increasing. So midday meal scheme, which comes under PM Poshan, it is a centrally sponsored scheme that provides one hot cooked meal to the school going children, and it is implemented by Ministry of Education, and this is one of the largest school feeding programs globally. And if you see the evolution of this scheme, in 1995 it was launched as National Program for Nutritional Support to Primary Education. So what was the main objective? That is that if there will be proper food, that will be proper nutritious food that will be provided in the schools itself, probably the children will be attracted, they will be motivated to come to schools. Plus, it will also lead to a proper nutritional support to these children, and that will lead to better better development of cognitive ability. In 2001, it provided for right to food case that Supreme Court mandated cooked meals. In 2007-8, it extended to upper primary classes 6 to 8, and in 2021, it was renamed as PM Poshan scheme. The coverage is from classes of pre-primary to 8th and then first to 8th. Government and government aided schools, special training centers, madrasa, maktabs, etc. All these are the schools that are covered under the midday meal scheme. The age group of 5 to 14 years, beneficiaries are around 11 to 12 crore children. The major objective is to improve the nutritional status of the children, reduce the overall wasting, stunting, etc., increase enrollment, attendance and retention, reducing the dropouts in the school, reduce the classroom hunger, because if a child is in hunger, probably he will or she will not be able to concentrate on the classes itself. With the better availability of the food in the schools, when they will not be hungry, they will be able to concentrate more on the lectures or the classes. Promote social equity, that is common meals for all the children irrespective of the religion, caste or economic status to which they belong. Also, nutritional norm per child per day for primary first to fifth 450 kilocalorie plus 12 gram of protein. Upper primary 6 to 8 700 kilocalorie plus 20 gram of protein. And also there has to be certain other norms, for example pulses, milk, fruits, vegetables, etc., that has to be mandatorily provided to these children. Then other features are that hot cooked meals are served on the school days, free food grains are supplied by the center via FCI, cost sharing is 60 to 40 with center and state 90 to 100, 90 to 10, especially in the case of northeastern and Himalayan states having bad terrain, the poor terrain. Cook cum helper honorarium that should be provided to them. There has been recent additions, for example, inclusion of Bal Vatika, pre-primary, Tithi Bhojan, community participation, focus on millets, Shri Anna and nutritional diversity, DBT support during school closures, legal and policy basis that it is backed by the Supreme Court Directive of 2001, linked to right to food, covered under National Food Security Act of 2013. And the significance is that it addresses the child malnutrition and hunger, improves learning outcomes, better cognitive development, and also it enhances the school participation of disadvantaged groups who are not capable to have proper foods or even proper 2 meals. And also it acts as a social equalizer that all the children actually dine in together, so that promotes the overall social capital, and that also helps in addressing or dismantling the stereotyping stigma associated with the children belonging to or the people belonging to the different groups. So it also acts as a social equalizer that helps in increasing the social capital. Next topic is credit rating agencies, and this is related to GS paper 3 growth and development and capital market, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 13. And this particular topic is related to your economy part, and the context is that one of the credit rating agencies, Moody's, they cuts India's growth forecast to 6%. So what are the credit rating agencies? These are the independent institutions that assess the credit worthiness of the issuer, that is government, corporate, etc., whenever they are coming with some kind of instruments. For example, there is CIBIL score for the individuals that tells us an idea that what is the repayment capability of that person. So similarly, these credit rating agencies gives us an idea that if government or any other a person is issuing any instrument like bonds, etc. So what is their repayment capability, what is their credit worthiness, whether they will be returning the money or they will be defaulting on the payments. So it provides for forward looking rating on the ability and willingness to repay debt, whether government will be able to repay the debt that they are taking, whether any of the corporates, businesses will be able to repay the debt that they are taking. Also that help investors evaluate the credit risk and the financial risk, that investors will be taking a sound decision that whether they should give their money to this person or not. Major function is the credit assessment, evaluates the borrower's repayment capacity, whether they will be repaying the debt that they are taking in a timely manner or not. Debt rating, that it will assign rating to the bonds, loans, securities, etc. That will give an idea about the risk associated with that debt. Market transparency, standardized objective risk signals. Investors protection, that it will enable the informed investment decisions. It will also provide the financial stability, that it will assess the regulators in systemic risk monitoring. There is also this credit bureau, which is focusing on the past credit behavior of any of the institution, whereas the credit rating agencies focus is on the future repayment ability, that whether the person who is taking the money or the debt will be able to repay or not. Entities that are covered under credit rating agencies are government, corporates, etc., whereas under the credit bureau it is the individuals who are covered. And credit rating agencies give the credit rating, whereas the credit bureau gives the credit score, report, etc., for example CIBIL, etc. Also, if you talk about the regulation in India, credit rating agencies are regulated by SEBI under the SEBI Credit Rating Agency Regulations of 1999. They has to mandatory disclose the methodology based on which they are rating, conflict of interest safeguards that any particular credit rating agencies, whenever they are rating. For example, let's suppose there is a company X, okay, and there is a credit rating agencies, and this agency is also owned by the promoters of this company itself. So in any case, this agency is going to give good rating to this particular company. So there should not be any conflict of interest. There should be also periodic review of the ratings that should be done, that what is the methodology that they are using, how transparent they are functioning. Internal audits and the compliance system should be there. There should be also oversight from the SEBI, penalties, etc., that can be levied. There are major credit rating agencies in India. For example, CRISIL is there, ICRA is there, CARE Rating, India Rating, BRIC Work Rating, etc. These are the major credit rating agencies. Then you have the sovereign credit rating agencies, which assess a country's ability to repay the external debt that they are taking. The major parameters based on which it is calculated is the GDP growth of the country, fiscal deficit, and the debt to GDP ratio. That means the overall financial health, inflation and interest rate in the economy, external debt, whether that is sustainable or not, political and institutional stability, because if there will be political and institutional instability, that will also directly impact the repayment capability of the government. There are rating scales, for example, AAA that shows the highest safety, BBB investment grade thresholds are there, below BBB that shows the junk or high risk associated with the debt. Importance is that there is lower borrowing cost for high rated countries. It boosts the investor confidence as well as the foreign direct investment. It also ensures the currency stability. This was the question that was asked in 2022, and the first statement was, in India, credit rating agencies are regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. We have just seen it is regulated by SEBI itself. We have to just eliminate option 1 and we will be able to get the answer, that is B, 2 and 3 only as the right answer for this particular question. So similarly, there will be certain questions in the actual examination where by eliminating any one option itself, you will be able to get the answer without much difficulty. Next topic is OPEC plus. This is related to GS paper 2, important international institutions, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 13. So this Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, is a permanent intergovernmental organization of major oil exporting countries, the countries which are majorly exporting the oil. And this was established in 1960 by the Baghdad Conference, and the founding members of OPEC are Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, etc. Headquarters of OPEC is in Vienna, Austria, and the objective of creation of this OPEC is to coordinate and unify the petroleum policies of the member countries, that there should be a sync with regard to the global policies of the major oil exporting countries, and ensure that there is stable oil prices, ensure there is stable oil supply, ensure steady revenue for the producers, for the exporters. The major functions are that they fix oil production quotas. It also influences the global oil supply and prices. It also acts as a market stabilizer. For example, cartel-like role are also given to them. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, UAE, Kuwait, Nigeria, Venezuela, etc. are the members of the OPEC. Then OPEC plus, which is an alliance of OPEC members plus non-OPEC oil producing countries, and this was formed in 2016. For example, OPEC countries plus Russia, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Oman, Azerbaijan, etc. are the members of the OPEC plus. And they again are coordinating the global oil production levels, stabilizing oil markets, especially during the volatility. And also they are preventing price crashes or the excessive spikes in the prices of the crude oil to ensure that it is affordable by the consumers. The major features is that joint decisions on the production cuts, increases, etc. are taken by the OPEC members. covers a large share of the global oil supply. Around 40% is being supplied by these members itself. It enhances the overall collective market influence. It also improves the overall bargaining capacity of these members, these oil producing countries. That is all from this particular session. Thank you for joining this session. All the very best. Keep studying.